In this video, I will attempt to give you a few hints on how to solve question 4.2. 4.2 requires you to work with parallel arrays. You need to look out for another video that I will send to you on how parallel arrays work and try to incorporate that into this question. The second part of this question requires you to work with an array. The array will have many cells, and each cell of the array contains a string. So I have a string in each of these cells in my array. So the array starts at position cell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's just make it a round figure of 10. So there are 10 cells in this array. The question now is, how do I process every value in the array? And how do I process the string inside of each cell in the array? So the first thing I need to do is, since I need to process every value in the array, is let's run a loop from 1 to 10, do, and begin. This loop will execute 10 times, and it will allow me to go to each cell in the array. That will allow me to go to each cell, to every cell in the array. Let's give this array a name, ARR, as an example. Let's get the value. Let's assume that this array has names. So I'm going to get the name from the array, ARRI. And now let's process this value that I got from the array. Since this value is another string, and I would like to search, let's assume that was the name, and I want to search through the string one character at a time, it then requires a second loop within my first loop. So I now start a second loop. My outer loop was I, the inner loop I'll call J, and J will be from 1 to, well, I'm processing N. N is a string, so from 1 to the length of N. Do, and let's begin. Recall, I just read the first value. Well, I was 1, I got the first value into N, and now this inner loop is going to execute and process the value of N. And let's say we're looking for vowels. So if I'm searching for vowels, for J from 1 to N, do, begin, and then I will check if N is my string, treat N, which is a string, treat it like an array. So that will be if NJ, position J, if that is in, we know how to look for vowels. If that is in the set A, E, I, O, U, then what do you want to do? If I want to count up the vowels, you create a counter, count equals count plus 1, end. And because this is an accumulator, count is going to need to be initialized to 0. Notice that count must be set to 0 inside of that loop. So each time you come in and I changes, you get the new value from the array and count is reset to 0. And then I end this in a loop. And finally, I end the outer loop. So what happens here is I takes on the value 1. I'm at that position. At position 1, I take the name and I store it in the variable N. And then this loop this code executes. This code, this entire loop executes. For J, let's assume N had the value of Winnie. So Winnie is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Therefore, the loop is going to run from 1 to the length of 6. If N, which is our variable J is 1, it starts off at 1. If it is a vowel, W, no, it's not a vowel. It ignores it. When I hit the N, the inner loop has to finish. So it goes back up and J becomes 2. Is N2. N2 is an I. Is that in the set AEI? Yes, it is a vowel. We would have converted this to uppercase. Count would have incremented to 1. It was 0, changes to 1. Go back up, J becomes 3. Is N3? N3 happens to be the letter character N. It's not in the set. J becomes 4. 4 is also an N. No, it's not a vowel. J becomes 5. It's another I, W-I-N-N-I-E. So is I? Yes, it is. Count equals count plus 1. Count was 1 plus 1. It becomes 2. J then becomes 6. If N6 is in the set, it's an E. Yes, it is in the set. Count becomes 3. That loop has now run 6 times. It's now completed. Then only do we go back up and I now becomes 2. At which case, N now becomes ARR2, which is the second name in the array. And that could be another name like Tigger. And then the inner loop is going to run. Tigger is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The length is 6. The inner loop is going to run 6 times. And each time it's looking at one character in the array. And when that finishes, it goes back up to the I becomes 3, and it's processing the third cell. So in a similar way, the same technique is required in this question. But you need to find consecutive dashes. So the question is, how do you find consecutive dashes? Well, here, where I was checking for vowels, to check for consecutive dashes, I would have checked if N position J is equal to a dash. And for it to be consecutive, I will say, and what's next to that position J? J plus 1. If that is also equal to a dash, then you would want some type of a counter. So you will have count equals count plus 1. That's how you would look for consecutive spaces. Be a bit cautious. Here you're checking J plus 1. And if you're running the loop J from 1 to the length of N, when this J value reaches the last last position or the last value, and you check J plus 1, you are actually going out of the string that you are searching. So you'd want to run this loop from length of N minus 1. Think about that. And then how do you check if it's come to an end? In other words, if Nj is equal to a dash and it's in the next character, which is J plus 1, is not equal to a dash, that would mean it's no longer consecutive. So these are some of the techniques that you are going to require to solve this question 4.2. Together with this, the count variable that you are working with, you need to check to see whether you need to build in finding the highest. Have a variable called high and check if count is greater than high each time you read a new line. I hope these help you.